Hello everyone, welcome to Rao's Academy for Competitive Exam. Today in this session we are going to discuss about science and technology questions asked by UPSC in General Studies paper 3 in Mains 2023. 3 questions have been asked. One was on AI, second was on use of microbes for the production of energy, and third question was on Chandrayaan 3. Let us discuss those questions one by one. Starting with question number 1. Here, question is, introduce the concept of artificial intelligence, AI. How does AI help clinical diagnosis? Do you perceive any threat to privacy of the individual in the use of AI in the healthcare? So, question is about artificial intelligence and use of artificial intelligence for diagnosis in healthcare settings. So, in this particular question, you can start with introduction, wherein you can define what exactly is artificial intelligence. Define artificial intelligence. So what do we mean by artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is simulation of intelligence by machines. With the help of computer programs, with the help of algorithms and lots of data, we can make sure that human intelligence is simulated by machines. And when they start doing that, when they start showing cognitive abilities, that is what is known as artificial intelligence, right? So AI is a simulation of human intelligence based on computer programs. And the raw material for the development of AI programs is data. Without data, we cannot imagine artificial intelligence, right? So that is how you can define it. And at the same time, in introduction only, you can highlight that it has its applications. For example, in 2018, NITI Aayog came up with National Strategy on Artificial Intelligence. Under that National Strategy on Artificial Intelligence, one of the focus areas was use of AI in diagnosis in healthcare systems. Right? So question is also asking this, and that's why you can refer that particular point in introduction only. In healthcare, AI can be used for diagnosis of various diseases, which provides various advantages as far as early treatment of those diseases is concerned. Right? So that way you can introduce this particular question. Now, in the body part of the question, in the body part of this answer, you can write about help of AI in clinical diagnosis. In clinical diagnosis. Right? So how AI can help in the clinical diagnosis? AI can help in clinical diagnosis for accurate diagnosis. Accurate diagnosis. Whatever human errors are involved in case of diagnosis, we will be able to nullify those errors with the help of AI. So accuracy will be there. Early diagnosis we will be able to carry out. Early diagnosis. And this is very important, especially for the treatment of diseases like cancer. Because if we are able to diagnose cancer at the early stage, we'll be able to treat that cancer in a better way. Right? Then it can even tell us about the stages of disease. Right? What is the stage of that particular disease in a particular individual? That information also we can get from artificial intelligence. Also, it is cost effective. It is cost effective to use artificial intelligence in the diagnosis of various diseases. And last and the most important, efficiency of diagnosis centers will improve. Right? When we start use of AI for diagnosis, efficiency of these diagnosis centers that are there in various hospitals or otherwise, their efficiency is going to increase, right? So these are some of the helps, some of the important aspects that AI can provide us for clinical diagnosis, right? Now here you can even use examples. For example, for the diagnosis of TB, chest x-rays play an important role, and those chest x-rays can be analyzed by AI machines, and on the basis of that analysis of chest x-rays, those AI machines will be able to tell us whether a particular person is suffering from TB or not, right? So that is what is the use of AI in clinical diagnosis. So that way you can highlight first part of the body. So here we have highlighted first part of the body. Now in the second part of the body, we will be able to discuss about the threats posed by AI, posed by use of AI in clinical diagnosis or in healthcare. Now, what kind of threat is being posed? So, the most important threat is data, right? Because we know that health data is a sensitive data. It is linked to privacy of an individual. And that's why if this data is accessed by, let's say, hackers, then that may pose a threat to the privacy of an individual, right? So, first threat is healthcare data is sensitive, and hence its leakage may threaten privacy, right? So that is the most important concern related to use of artificial intelligence in healthcare settings. First. Second, now the methods of data collection is also a threat. How that data is being collected, is there consent involved or not? That is also a threat related to collection or use of data or use of AI in healthcare, because AI works on the basis of data, and for the collection of that data, whether person's consent has been received or not, that is one of the concerns related to use of AI in healthcare. And then unregulated use of data. Now let us consider that data has been collected for the purpose in healthcare. Let's say data has been collected from a person, and that person has been told that your data will be used for the healthcare reasons. But it is not guaranteed that that data will be used only for healthcare. It may be used for certain other applications, and that's why we can say that there may be unregulated use of that data, which is also a threat. And lastly, there will be a threat of cyber attacks. And if cyber attacks happen, then that data may be used by cyber criminals for various illicit purposes, right? So all these are the threats, and that's why whenever we start use of AI in healthcare, we'll have to make sure that there are proper security measures that have been already implemented. Otherwise, it may pose threat to the privacy of an individual, right? So that way you can highlight these points. And then we can even talk about conclusion. So what should be the conclusion? Conclusion. So in conclusion, you can highlight that there is a need to implement recently passed data protection act in its letter and spirit. Once we do that, once we implement this data protection act in its letter and spirit, we will be able to guarantee that data that is collected for healthcare purpose will be used for healthcare purpose only. And also there will be accountability of the servers. Let's say there is organization which is storing that healthcare data. That organization will have a responsibility that it takes all measures with respect to the safety and security of that data, right? And that's why we need this Data Protection Act to be implemented in its letter and spirit. Also, in order to reduce the threats of leakage, we can use more AI. More AI can be used to protect data or healthcare data in a better way. Fine. Because in 2023, what has happened? You must be aware there was leakage of data from AIIMS, and the people who were handling server of AIIMS, they were not able to understand that they are under cyber attack. And that's why we can use AI systems to know whether there is any infiltration in the servers or not, right? So for that we can use artificial intelligence. So that way we can approach this particular question asked by UPSC on AI, its importance in diagnosis, and what are the threats posed by AI if at all its use is started in healthcare settings. That is about question number 1. Now, second question that has been asked by UPSC is with respect to the use of microbes. Question is, discuss several ways in which microorganisms can help in meeting the current fuel shortage. So right now we have a shortage of fuel. What kind of fuel is in shortage? Especially green and clean fuel is shortage, right? There is a shortage of green and clean fuel, and that's why there is a need to make sure that there is more and more green and clean fuel available in the context of energy crisis as well as climate change, where we can use microorganisms. So how you can introduce this particular answer? In this particular answer, in the introductory part, you can write microorganisms, several microorganisms can be used for conversion of chemical energy stored in biomass in the form of energy that can be used as fuel, right? For example, we can use microbes to carry out fermentation of molasses, which is produced in sugarcane industry, to produce ethanol, right? So that is one of the examples that you can highlight in the introductory part itself, in order to convey, in order to substantiate your argument that the chemical energy of biomass is converted into the fuel by microorganisms, right? Now, in the body part of the answer, you can write many different types of fuels that can be produced with the help of microbes. So microbes can help produce, or microorganisms can be used for the production of Microorganisms can be used for the production of ethanol, biodiesel, for the production of ethanol, biodiesel, hydrogen as a fuel, methane, butanol, lipids, etc. Right? So all these fuels can be produced with the help of microbes. Especially, most mature technology that we have is for ethanol and biodiesel. Other forms of fuel, that means hydrogen, methane, butanol, lipids, are in the developmental stage. But we have already started use of ethanol and biodiesel, and that's why we can say that it is one of the most advanced form of technology that where microorganisms are being used for the production of fuel, right? And then we can explain all these points. For example, how it can be explained. For example, molasses is converted into ethanol, by fermentation, by microbes. Fine. So that is one example. Then plants like jatropha. Plants like jatropha can be used for the production of biodiesel. And there also we use fermentation by microorganisms as a process. Whatever plant juices that we get, those plant juices can be converted into biodiesel with the help of fermentation. Then third example you can write about is, let's say, production of methane. Methane can be produced by bacteria like Clostridium. Even hydrogen fuel can be produced with the help of cyanobacteria. And this is very important technology because it can allow us in future, to convert sunlight into hydrogen fuel, right? And this happens with the process called as photosynthesis. And that's why this is one of the important technologies that we may have in future, right? So that is hydrogen. Then it can also be used, microorganisms can be used for the production of butanol and lipids, right? And butanol is considered as a better fuel than ethanol. Right? So all these are the examples that you can write in order to substantiate your argument that yes, microbes can be used for the production of various forms of fuels. And all these forms of fuels are especially important in the context of energy crisis that we are facing. Also, there is increase in the emissions of greenhouse gases. When we use these kind of fuels produced from microorganisms, we'll be able to reduce that emission of greenhouse gases as well. That means these fuels produced from microorganisms are environment friendly fuels, right? And then conclusion. In conclusion, you can highlight E20 fuel. That is the target that Government of India has set, right? E20 is that petrol where 20% is of ethanol. And when we increase the percentage of ethanol, we are making sure that the petrol, which is a fossil fuel, it becomes more greener and greener, right? There is ethanol blending program as well, EBP, ethanol blending program. right? We have also started use of biodiesel. Biodiesel has been promoted by Government of India. Now, there is a need to make sure that there is enough raw material available for the production of fuel from microorganisms. And for that, we'll have to make sure that whatever form of byproducts that are being produced in food processing industries, those should be allowed for the production of diesel, or those should be allowed for the production of biofuels with the help of microorganisms. And for that, there is a need to make sure that food crops are not diverted for the production of fuels. Because if food crops are diverted for the production of fuel, it may put a question mark on food security. And hence, there is a need to have more or better supply chain mechanism so that we'll be able to collect various byproducts produced in different parts of a region in food processing industry, and those byproducts can be taken to a centralized unit where microorganisms can be used for the production of fuel, right? So that way you can approach this particular question. Now let us discuss next question, and that question is on Chandrayaan-3. Now the third question is, what is the main task of India's third moon mission which could not be achieved in its earlier mission? List the countries that have achieved this task, introduce the subsystems in the spacecraft launched, and explain the role of the Virtual Launch Control Center at the Vikram Sarabhai Space Center, which contributed to the successful launch from Sriharikota. Right, so the question is on Chandrayaan-3, and this was quite expected question given the launch of Chandrayaan-3 by ISRO, right? But in this question, there are 4 different subparts. So there is a need to make sure that you address all those 4 subparts. So how one can start with this particular question? In the introductory part, you can write about the Chandrayaan mission, right? So Chandrayaan mission is the lunar exploration mission launched by ISRO. Lunar exploration mission launched by ISRO. Right? In its third mission, ISRO has launched a lander, a rover, along with propulsion module. Right, so that way you can introduce this particular answer. If you wish, you can even write about LVM-3 was the launch vehicle used for the launch of this. Right, so that is what is the introduction. Now, in the body part, all 4 parts needs to be addressed. Right, all 4 parts should be addressed. So first part is, what is the main task of India's third moon mission which could not be achieved in its earlier missions? Right, so there were 3 main aspects of Chandrayaan-3. So main task. What was the main task of Chandrayaan-3 which could not be achieved by earlier missions? First, soft landing on lunar surface. Right, there is a need to demonstrate that there is soft landing possible on lunar surface. Second, roving by the rover Pragyan. Right, so that was the second. And third is in situ experiments. That means on the lunar surface itself, there will be various experiments that will be carried out by the components of the parts of Chandrayaan 3 mission. Right, so all these are the main tasks of Chandrayaan 3, and this we were not able to achieve with the predecessor, that means in Chandrayaan 2. Right, so that is what is the first part. Now in the second part, list the countries that have achieved this task. List the countries that have achieved this task. So in the second part of the body, countries that have achieved this task, are first Russia, or you can even write USSR, then the USA, and then China. Right, that means India has become 4th country to achieve this task. Right, so that is the second part. In the third part, we are supposed to discuss about introduce the subsystems in this spacecraft launch. Right, so subsystems. So there are 3 prime payloads or subsystems of Chandrayaan 3. First is the propulsion module. The propulsion module. What was the task of propulsion module? Propulsion module, its task was to take lander from the injection point, to the lunar orbit. Right, so that was the main task of the propulsion module. And this propulsion module, after delivering the lander in the orbits of Moon, it is also supposed to carry out another function, and that function is to know about the habitability. It will capture the radiations coming from Earth, and those radiations coming from Earth will be compared with other planets, other exoplanets, to confirm is there any life present on those planets or not. Right, so that is what is the propulsion module. Second is lander. So lander has those components that will allow us to know seismic activity on the lunar surface. Right, so it will allow us to know seismic activity on the lunar surface. Lander will also tell us about the plasma density and its variations. What is the plasma density on the lunar surface and how that plasma density varies, that would be told to us by the components of lander. And then it will also check temperature variability on the lunar surface. Right, so all these tasks would be carried out by lander and its components. And then we have rover. What rover is going to do? Third is rover. Rover will carry out, rover is named as Pragyan, and rover will try to understand elemental abundance. Near its landing site. That means what kind of chemicals are present on the lunar surface, what is the abundance of those chemicals. All that information will be collected by rover Pragyan. Right, so that is the third part of the question. And then in the fourth part, we are supposed to discuss about the role of Virtual Launch Control Center, VLCC, which is present at Vikram Sarabhai Space Center. Right, so what does this VLCC do? Role of VLCC. Role of VLCC. Now this VLCC has played an extremely important role in certain aspects of Chandrayaan-3. First is planning of the mission. Planning of the mission, right? The mission which will be launched to moon, what kind of path it will follow, where exactly it will land, all that planning was done by VLCC. Secondly, it also helped ISRO. ISRO was able to check all parameters of LVM-3 with the help of VLCC. Right? LVM-3 is the launch vehicle Mark III, which was used for the launch of Chandrayaan-3. So that its parameters were checked by ISRO with the help of this VLCC. Also, it helped in the communication between various components of Chandrayaan-3 and ground station communication. It also carried out data analysis. Whatever data collected from the components of Chandrayaan-3, that data was analyzed by VLCC. And lastly, it also had contingency measures placed. In case any mishap or problem occurs, what measures should be taken? Those measures were also ready with VLCC. Right? So that was the role played by VLCC. Fine. So that is how we can take care of all the parts that UPSC has asked in this particular question. And then in conclusion, we can say that Chandrayaan-3 can help us know more about the south pole of lunar surface, which in turn can solve various curiosities that we have related to the early solar system, related to the evolution of Earth. Also, it can tell us about the elements present on the lunar surface, and in future, it may also allow us to carry out space mining. It can allow us to bring back those elements from the lunar surface. Right? So that way one can address this particular question. So these were the questions that UPSC has asked from Science and Technology in mains of 2023. So that is about these questions. Thank you.